Well, happy Saturday, folks. The real Captain Kirk here. We're live from One Bethlehem Plaza here on the 30th of May. Hard to believe meteorological spring is just pretty much in the history books here. Again, 1 June starts meteorological summer. After the horrible Memorial Day weekend we had last year, here in the East, it was just a downright frigid, wet, miserable weekend. This weekend, at least it's not raining, but it's the coolest in 5 years. Windy, getting cloudy here today, here in the East near 360's headquarters. So not the greatest weekend here. Thought we'd ask our sunny 360 robot here again about a new product we've launched here. Again, it's an allergy pollen index. Again, so it's a global, out 14 days. In fact, we have this data that actually can go out weekly, year ahead. But again, one thing we see here is that the pollen is reducing here across the South. Again, it just passed the grass tree season, and it's heading north toward the Northern U.S. and into Canada. So again, a neat 14-day product here for our clients here, predicting pollen levels, again, all over the world. I thought I'd ask the robot here, Sunny, here again, tell me about May weather trends, and it was cool. Coolest in 5 years. Really cool here in the eastern half of the country, Great Lakes, down into Texas. Hot there in the Pacific Northwest. But again, overall, coolest in 5, near average on a national scale. Rainfall maps here, chart right here again. It was wet in the southeast. Thank goodness they needed it after the extreme drought they've been in. So again, probably too much of a good thing in some areas, some flooding areas. But overall, the U.S. was actually driest in 3 years, above average rainfall. Again, dry in the North Central U.S. there in the Central U.S. After kind of a wetter period prior to this. So good news is we got some rain coming here for those parched areas in the North Central U.S. Looking at May day by day, what we want really this time of year for big retailers that we support, hot, dry weeks. That's what we want. And we really didn't have that. The beginning of the month was very cool. Map chart here left is temperatures versus last year. Right chart is temperatures versus average. So a cool theme through the front half of May. A little bit drier again. So some of the equation, but we want hot and dry. We really had that big heat wave in the east around the 15th through the 19th. That was certainly the peak week for seasonal sales here across the U.S. Again, air conditioners, fans, pool chemicals, cold beverages, you name it. We probably bought it during that big heat surge that we had here with dry weather. Unfortunately, we've been up and down again, cold, miserable, wet weekends here in the east over Memorial Day, and then again a kind of a coolish, at least dry weekend here again. But so again, warmer, a bit of warmer on a national scale. A lot of that's where people don't live, and wetter. So I wouldn't say that this tail end of the month is all that great, again, for retail seasonal sales. Look at last week, World Summer here any day, here the 30th. 3.6 warmer than last year, warmest in 6 years. Seventh warmest in 41 years, so above average national temperatures. Again, big map here is trends versus last year. So colder West Coast than last year, Northeast, again, cooler than average. Depending on where you are, again, a little bit better in the mid-Atlantic. Hot 90-degree days down, 9%, least in 3 years, 19th least in 41 years. So not a lot of really hot days. 1% what in last year, what is in 4 years, 9th, what is in 41. So above average on that front. Really, really hot there in the UK and Europe. Look at that, number one warmest in 41 plus years and dry. So that drove a lot of seasonal sales. Again, good for them. And again, China, again, a little bit on the warm side. And Brazil actually kind of cooler and wetter, so they're getting into their fall harvest season here for their second full season crop. So it's been a wetter year down there. So again, their crop should be again better than average for sure. Speaking of severe weather here, severe weather to date here took a little bit of a lull here this past week. Only 23 tornadoes added, 94 hail events, 360 wind events. So all metrics now are trending way below last year's levels. In fact, tornadoes and hail are trending below average. So we've had a lull here. Wind cases are still 21% above average. We'll add a bit here. Again, severe weather is going to flare up here in the Central Plains and the Heartland. Again, they'll take it after kind of a dry May. Again, the crops in the ground. So this will be hopefully more rain and less severe weather here. But again, so we don't want the tornadoes and hail. But again, they'll certainly take the rain here. Look at this week here, week ending 6 June. This is getting us into meteorological summer, 1 June. Summer will be a few more weeks away according to the sun here. But overall, a little misleading here. 0.5 warmer than last year, 12th warmest in 41 years. But again, cooler East Coast. So where people live, even California, cooler than last year. So not terribly hot. Where it's hot is in the Rockies and the Central Plains, where not a lot of folks live. So not a huge lift for seasonal sales. In fact, those hot 90-degree days are down 35% versus last year, least in 9 years, 8th least in 41 years. So not a lot of extreme heat on the national scale. And drier, 12% drier than last year, driest in 3 years, 11th driest in 41. A little bit of a drier pattern there for southeast, mid-Atlantic, where it had been heavier rain here. So again, they'll take need a little bit of a break here after some flooding rains, potentially some flooding rains there in the New Mexico area. Again, maybe early signs of the monsoon season, but a little bit of a rain there in New Mexico and heavier rain right there in the heart of the Corn Belt, Nebraska, Iowa, southern Minnesota here. They'll take it with their corn crops in the ground. Looking at next week here, again, this is not Father's Day week, actually. Father's is late this year. It's actually out toward I think the 21st again. So overall, this 7 through 13 June period here will be 1.9 warmer than last year. Again, a little misleading. Warmest in 5, second warmest in 41 years. But that heat is really concentrated there in the Rockies, northern plains. So again, East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, a little bit cooler. West Coast, again, even the Pacific Northwest is cooler than last year, even though it's still pretty warm. So this will dampen demand a bit. Again, just concentrated there more in the Central U.S. Hot 90-degree days will tick up here with all that heat in the Central Plains and the Northern Rockies. So hot 90 days up 1% versus last year, 15th most in 41 years. Rainfall again down for a wet year last year, period last year. 27% drier than last year, 13 dries in 41 years. And again, drying out there across the southeast. Let's hope this trend doesn't continue. It should get wetter again here because we don't want to resume the drought in the southeast. Again, still very, very dry there in the Pacific Northwest. And again, more rain kind of in parts of spotty, but in parts of the Corn Belt where the corn crops are in the ground. We aggregate these 2-week trends here through the 13th of June here. So you've got to be careful because you're mixing hots and colds and warms. But the general theme is the real hot weather's in the Central U.S. and the Central Canada. Again, warm there in Central Europe. So again, kind of continuing their warmish trends. We look at the rainfall here trends. So again, heaviest rain, again, probably concentrated there in the Central U.S. and Southern Canada. Southeast, Mid-Atlantic drying out a bit. Brazil still getting some rain. Again, that big bullseye of no rain there is kind of typical. They just don't get rain this time of year in that area. But again, they're starting their harvest season here, so they kind of want a little bit of a lull in the rain activity to get their second full season crops out of the ground. Don't forget, folks, you can get this email newsletter blog every Saturday afternoon as we issue the email. Again, weathertrends360.com/newsletter/captions-log. Subscribe. And again, get it every Saturday as we issue these updates. So, folks, have a great week ahead, and we will talk to you again this time next week.